Patty Simpson, and today we're going to make a histogram. Now, last video we created a frequency distribution table with some data. We're going to use that same data today to help us with our histogram. A histogram just shows when we have quantitative data, it shows that data broken up into different classes or bins and the number of observations in each of those classes or bins. When we made our frequency table, we chose to have 6 classes or bins. So if you wanted to go back to the video before to find out how we decided on the number of classes or bins we were going to have and how wide they were, you might want to watch the video before this. So now that we have these classes and frequencies, in order to draw our histogram, we need to know our class boundaries. So we're going to add to our frequency table just another column here. And in this column, we're going to put our class boundaries. And the way we come up with the class boundaries is we find the midpoints between our upper limit of our classes and our lower limit of the next class. So we're going to find our class boundaries by finding that midpoint between the upper bound or the upper limit and the lower limit. And to find a midpoint, remember you can add the two numbers together and divide by 2. So this would be 49 divided by 2. Or I can just kind of look in the, in between these two would be 24.5. I'm now just going to count by the width of my classes. So this width was 10. So I'm going to count 10 units for each one of these, and it should give me that same midpoint for the next class. So if I count by 10, I end up with 44 and a half, 54.5, 64.5, and 74.5. And if we check that, the midpoint between 54 and 55, sure enough, is at 54.5. Okay, now I'm going to find the beginning point of each one of those. So this number, this is our class boundary, and we're just going to put that same number here, and that's going to transfer down on all of them. So that we have our class boundaries. And then here we're counting by tens, so we just go back 10. And if you notice that all of my numbers or all my observations in this class of 15 to 24 fall within the class boundaries of 14 and a half to 25 and a half. And the reason we do that is because when we create a histogram, we have a continuous number line. And we only want to write one number at each one of these tick marks. And so this way, we can make sure that we get the data from each class within that boundary. So I'm just going to start at my first one here. And I'm going to write 14.5. And then I end it with 20.5. Notice the next class then begins at that 20.5, so I don't have to write another number. It's just like a number line with a continuous flow to it. So, and I have a consistent interval between those numbers. So by finding the midpoint there, it helps me to be able to write a continuous interval. That's the horizontal axis, tells me those class boundaries. And then here on the vertical axis, I'm going to put my frequencies. So here it's the number of those observations that I saw. So how many observations were within that class? Well, we go back to our frequency, and there were 6 within that class. So I'm going to just count by ones, since I just need to get to 6. And now all I need to do is draw bars that show that frequency. And each of my bars needs to be the same width, while the height will represent the frequency. My bars need to remain the same width because we're going by that consistent interval. So the next bin had 3 observations in it. So I make my bar 3 units high. The next class had 2 observations in it. The next class had 4 observations in it, or 4 data values. The next one had 0 in it, so my bar's flat there. And then this one had 5 observations in it. Notice one thing that makes this different from a bar graph. With bar graphs, we use bar graphs with qualitative data. We use histograms with quantitative data. And histograms, the bars touch because we are on this number line, whereas with our bar graphs, there were spaces between each of our bars. So, I hope you've enjoyed the video, and hopefully that'll help you to create a histogram. Until next time.